to be distinguished from monogenic system. In Christian biblical criticism and theology, there have been disputes about the meaning and usage of monogenes. Does the word mean only begotten, as it is as traditionally rendered, or does it merely mean only or only one? Does the word mean only single or unique son, or special, privileged, favorite, or legitimate son? Related text critical issues to John chapter 1 verse 18. Monogenes has two primary definitions, pertaining to being the only one of its kind within a specific relationship, and pertaining to being the only one of its kind a class, unique in kind. Thus monogenes may be used both as an adjective monogenes pais, meaning unique and special. Its Greek meaning is often applied to mean one of a kind, one and only. Monogenes may be used both as an adjective monogenes pais, only child, or only legitimate child, special child, and also in its own as a noun, o monogenes, the only one, or the only legitimate child. It can be applied to an only child, or only legitimate child, special child, and also in its own as a noun, o monogenes, the only one, or the only legitimate child. The word is used in Hebrews chapter 11 verses 17 to 19 to describe Isaac, the son of Abraham. However, Isaac was not the only begotten son of Abraham, but was the chosen, having special virtue. The term is notable outside normal Greek usage in two special areas, in the cosmology of Plato and in the Gospel of John. As concerns the use by Plato, there is broad academic consensus, generally following the understanding of the philosopher Proclus. Lexical entry. In a Greek-English lexicon of Liddell and Amp. Scott, the following main definition is given: a. The only member of a kin, a kind, hence generally only single child. Hesiod, Works and Days 376, Herodotus Histories 7.221, cf. Gospel of John 1.14, Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews 32.1, Hesiod Theogony, concerning Hecate. 2. Unique, of Parmenides 8.4, epsilon sigma delta epsilon mu, omicron rho alpha nu sigma gamma epsilon gamma omicron nu omega sigma. Plato Timaeus 31b, cf. Proclus Institutio Theologica 22, theta epsilon sigma mu. Friedrich Preisig Samuel Butch 4324.15. A typical example: the Egyptians told me that Moneros was the only son of the first king, who died prematurely, and this dirge was sung by the Egyptians in his honor, and this, they said, was their earliest and their only chant. But note that this example does not necessarily rule out sons by concubines. Usage in Greek texts. Classical Greek texts. The following examples are taken from the Greek text uses of monogenes in the Perseus database. Hesiod, Theogony 426. Also, because she is an only child, the goddess Hecate receives not less honor. 446. So even though she is her mother's only child, Hecate is honored amongst all the immortal gods. Hesiod, Works and Days 375. There should be an only son to feed his father's house, for so wealth will increase in the home, but if you leave a second son you should die old. Herodotus 2.79.3. Monogenēs was the only born of the first king, who died prematurely. Herodotus 7.221.1. Megasthenes sent to safety his only born, who was also with the army. Plato, Laws 3, 691e. The Athenians stranger to Megillus and Clinias. To begin with, there was a god watching over you, and he, foreseeing the future, restricted within due bounds the royal power by making your kingly line no longer single but twofold. In the next place, some man, in whom human nature was blended with power divine, observing your government to be still swollen with fever, blended comprehended the self-willed force. Plato, Critias 113d, the story of Atlantis, Avenor with his wife Leucippe, and they had 4 offspring, an only begotten daughter, Cleito. Plato, Timaeus 31b, one only begotten heaven created. Plato, Timaeus 92c, the one only begotten heaven. Apollonius of Rhodes, Argonautica 3-1007, and propitiate only begotten Hecate, daughter of Perses. An exhaustive listing of monogenes can be found in the Thesaurus Lingua Graecae database. Parmenides, the reference above found in Lidlscott, and therefore in other lexicons, and unquestioned in Christian commentaries. 2. The use of monogenes by Parmenides has more recently been shown to probably be incorrect. The text of Parmenides 8:4 is unusually corrupt. Plutarch read the text as holomelos. The original reconstruction by H. Diels left the text open. Later editions of Diels' Crans defer to Plutarch's reading in the reconstructed Greek text. Others since reconstructed the text as monogenes, but John R. Wilson argues that this is inconsistent with context and suggests the text as monomelos. The inconsistency is accepted by H. Schmitz, but Schmitz proposes instead a return to holomelos. Parmenides b. 8-4, being unborn is undestroyable, for it is holomelos. Monogenes, monomeles, and unshakable and endless. Interpretation of classical Greek usage. Plato's Timaeus speaks twice of a monogenes heaven, Timaeus 31b, in order then that might be solitary, like the perfect animal, made not 2 worlds or an infinite number of them, but there is and ever will be one only begotten heaven created. Timaeus 92c. We may now say that our discourse about the nature of the universe has an end. The world has received animals, mortal and immortal, and is fulfilled with them, and has become a visible animal containing the visible, the sensible God, who is the image of the intellectual, the greatest, best, fairest, most perfect, the one only begotten heaven. The subject is the creation, or begetting, of heaven as a unique birth, not the birth of more than one cosmos. Comparison is also made with the begetting of animals and birds from the souls of like-minded men. In commentary on Plato, Proclus considers that if a visible god like the Uranus is to resemble higher invisible gods, then the visible cosmos must be monogenes. Greek Old Testament usage. The word occurs 5 times in the Septuagint. Judges chapter 11 verse 34. She was his only child. Psalm chapter 22 verse 20. Deliver my soul from the sword, my only begotten from the hand of the dog. Psalm chapter 25 verse 16. I am an only child and poor. Psalm chapter 35 verse 17. Deliver my soul from the mischief, my only begotten from the lions. Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 26. As one mourns for an only child. Tobit 8.17. They were both an only child. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7 verse 22. There is in her a spirit quick of understanding, holy, as an only child, manifold. Interpretation of Greek Old Testament usage. Psalm chapter 22 verse 20, 35-17 and Wisdom 7:22 appear to be personifications of the soul and wisdom as an only son and only daughter, respectively. There is an increase in the use of monogenes in later versions of the Septuagint. Gen 22:2, the beloved one whom you have loved. In Aquila's Greek translation uses monogenes to translate yachid, the common Hebrew word for only. Greek New Testament usage. The New Testament contains 9 uses, all adjectival. Luke chapter 7 verse 12, her only son. Luke chapter 8 verse 42, only daughter. Luke chapter 9 verse 38, only son. John chapter 1 verse 14, only begotten. John chapter 1 verse 18, textual variation in manuscripts, A. Only begotten, God. John chapter 3 verse 16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. John chapter 3 verse 18, he has not believed in the name of God's only Son. Heb 11:17, only legitimate son, since Abraham also fathered Ishmael from the slave girl Hagar, and 6 other sons from Keturah. 1 John chapter 4 verse 9, God sent his only Son into the world. Hellenistic Jewish usages. Josephus, Antiquities 2.181, Dan had an only child, USI, Josephus, Antiquities 2.263, Jephthah's daughter, she was also an only born and a virgin. Josephus, Antiquities 20.20, Monogenes, the king of Abiadine, had an elder brother by Helena also, as he had other sons by other wives besides, but he openly placed all his affections on this his favorite son Azitz, which was the origin of the envy which his other brethren, by the same father, bore to him, and on this account they hated him more and more, and were all under great affliction that the father should prefer Azitz before them. Psalms of Solomon chapter 18 verse 4, thy chastisement comes upon us as the firstborn and the only begotten son. Early patristic usage. Clement of Rome 25, the Phoenix is the only one of its kind. Nicene Creed, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. Macarius Magnus 403 AD. The Monogenes, title of a treatise. Gnosticism and magic texts. Platonic usage also impacted Christian usage, for example in Gnosticism. In Tertullian's Against the Valentinians, he gives the name to one of the 30 eons as monogenes in a syzygy with Macaria, blessedness. Friedrich Presikes Samuel Butch 4324, 15 contains a 3 RDC. AD magic invocation by an Egyptian girl called Capitoline, placing a papyrus in a box to invoke various gods, pagan, Jewish and Christian, including Ea Sabroth Barbary, God in heaven, the only begotten, to help her cast a love potion on a young man called Delos. I summon you divinities by the bitter necessities that bind you and by those carried away by the wind. IOIOEPHTHOUTHEIOPHIE. The greatest divinity RSABAOTHBARBARETHIALAMPSOSORNOPHRIEMPHERA, to God in the heavens, the only begotten, who shakes the depths, sending out the waves and the wind. Thrust forth the spirits of these divinities wherever the box. Similar content is found in Karl Presandan's Greek Magical Papyri Volume 1 p. 124. Arwunsch Antike Fluchtafeln 436. The problem with magical inscriptions on papyri, walls or ostraca is firstly dating the source, secondly that magical spells by their nature tend to be syncretic. In the example above, love-struck Capitolina summons all the divinities to release the spirits of all who drowned in the Nile, the unmarried dead, etc., to sway the heart of her young man. Yet she may not have known enough about Judaism or Christianity, or even Gnostic Christianity, to know whether Yahweh Sabaoth and the only begotten were the same God or not. Later uses in Christianity a troparion o monogenes Yeo's only begotten Son, ascribed to Justinian I. In Latin, Unigenitus, a papal bull issued by Pope Clement VI in 1343. Interpretation of New Testament usage. Some aspects of the meaning, or range of meanings, of monogenes in the New Testament are disputed. Lexicons of the New Testament both reflect and determine debate. Bauer BDAG. Kittel TDNT. Bowles EDNT. Friberg ALGNT, begetting. The entrance of only begotten into the English Bible was not directly from monogenes but from the Latin of the Vulgate, which had unigenitus. John chapter 3 verse 16 Sic enim delexit Deus mundum ad filium suum unigenitum daret at omnes qui credit in eum non perit sed habet vitam aeternam. John chapter 3 verse 16 God lufid midden ear des w tare he sealed hys ac enaden son tare nan nefer worthy on hein ge left. Ac hab thtshlyf. John chapter 3 verse 16 For God loveth of the world, that he yf his own begotten Son, that each man that believeth in him perish not but have everlasting life. The meaning of monogenes was part of early Christian Christological controversy regarding the Trinity. It is claimed that Arian arguments that use texts that refer to Christ as God's only begotten Son are based on a misunderstanding of the Greek word monogenes, and that the Greek word does not mean begotten in the sense we beget children but means having no peer, unique. Alternatively, in favor that the word monogenes does carry some meaning related to begetting is the etymological origin mono plus gens. The question is whether the etymological origin was still live as part of the meaning when the New Testament was written, or whether semantic shift has occurred. Limiting the semantic change of monogenes is that the normal word monos is still the default word in New Testament times, and that the terms coexist in Greek, Latin and English. Greek monos, Latin unicus, English only. Greek monogenes, Latin unigenitus, English only begotten. Also, there is a question about how separate from the idea of genes birth and begetting, the cited uses of monogenes in the sense of unique truly are. For example, the ending genes is arguably not redundant even in the sense of only, as per when Clement of Rome, and later Origen, Cyril and others, employ monogenes to describe the rebirth of the phoenix. At issue is whether Clement is merely stressing monos unique, or using monogenes to indicate unique in its method of rebirth, or possibly that there is only one single bird born and reborn. Likewise in Plato's Timaeus, the only begotten and created heaven is still unique in how it is begotten, in comparison to the begetting of animals and men, just as earth and heaven give birth to ocean and Tethys. Of the Little Scott references for unique that leaves only Parmenides, which is no longer considered a likely reading of the Greek text. Additionally, the New Testament frame of reference for monogenes is established by uses of the main verb beget, and readings of complementary verses, for example, Heb 1-5, For unto which of the angels said he at any time, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee, and again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. 1 John chapter 5 verse 18, We know that everyone who is begotten of God does not sin. Or, 1 John chapter 5 verse 18, We know that the one who is begotten of God does not sin. Uniqueness. This issue overlaps with and is interrelated with the question of begetting above. Interpretation of the uniqueness of monogenes in New Testament usage partly depends on understanding of Hellenistic Jewish ideas about inheritance. Philo stated, on Abraham 194, in the second place, after he had become the father of this his loved and only son, he, from the moment of his birth, cherished towards him all the genuine feelings of affection which exceeds all modest love, and all the ties of friendship which have ever been celebrated in the world. on sacrifice X. And he learnt all these things from Abraham his grandfather, who was the author of his own education, who gave to the all-wise Isaac all that he had, leaving none of his substance to bastards, or to the spurious reasonings of concubines. But he gives them small gifts, as being inconsiderable persons, for the possessions of which he is possessed, namely, the perfect virtues, belong only to the perfect and legitimate Son. In his 1894 translation of Philo, Charles Duke Young rendered "loved and only Son" as "only legitimate Son," which is not unreasonable given Philo's parallel comments in On Sacrifice X. 43. It also parallels Josephus's use for a legitimate son of the main royal wife. Likewise in the later Jewish Septuagint revisions, Gen 22:2 of Aquila, take your son Isaac, your only begotten son whom you love. Gen 22:12 of Symmachus, now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only begotten son, from me. In contrast, in Proverbs chapter 4 verse 3, Aquila, Symmachus and Theodotion all have monogenes of a mother's only begotten son where legitimacy is not an issue. In textual criticism, opinions are divided on whether Jesus is referred to as only begotten God or only begotten Son. In John chapter 1 verse 18, Monogenes Theos Sinaiticus, p. 66, Vaticanus etc. O monogenes uios Alexandrinus, textus receptus, Peshitta etc. This textual issue is complicated by the scribal abbreviations of nomina sacra where GD and SN are abbreviated in the Greek manuscripts by theta sigma and upsilon sigma, increasing the likelihood of scribal error.